Today we're talking all about how to make your blog post more accessible. I have a free tool that I'm going to show you that will hopefully help break things down into smaller paragraphs, smaller sections, not have as much passive voice, not including words that don't really mean anything. Remember back in the second video, God, it feels like so long ago, when I said that your audience doesn't know what you know and they don't talk like you, so we have to kind of simplify our concepts in order to meet them where they are. So this app that I'm about to show you, the Hemingway app, will help you move through that process of simplifying and not using, a lot of us use jargon that we're not always even aware that we do because we're so familiar with our topics. So when we use the Hemingway app, let me move myself over here. I'm going to take this blog post that I wrote. It's not actually done, guys. It's still very much in rough draft mode. It'll be much different when you actually see it when I post it in a few weeks. But here's what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that blog post and I'm just going to copy it right out of Google Docs and I'm going to paste it into the Hemingway app, which is at hemingwayapp.com. And it tells me up here, let me move myself over. Tells me up here in this corner that my readability for this blog post that I wrote is grade 9, which is good. I've written about 1,000 words. It has so much more information. How many characters, how many sentences, how many paragraphs? But I think I'd like to get a little bit simpler in the way that I explain these things. I'd like to maybe get down to like a grade 7. This is pretty good for me. Usually I'm much more at like 10th or 11th grade reading level. Sorry, y'all. Let me move myself over here so you can see what I'm doing. But as you can see here, Hemingway is like, this sentence is a little bit hard to read. And this one's very hard to read. And sometimes there are words that have simpler alternatives. So instead of saying strategize, I could say plan, and that would make this easier. And these paragraphs are getting a little bit long. So after all, maybe I can remove this after all part. We'll see if this makes it easier. And maybe I'll delete small businesses or solopreneurs because it doesn't know what that is. And maybe I'll break this into 2 sentences so that way, hey, it already says that this is easier to read. Every little thing that I can do here, maybe I don't need to say a lot of to simplify it even more. Instead of who don't have, I could say without content marketing departments. So maybe I could simplify this down to the business, we'll say, because I'm cutting that, I'll say the business owners have to plan, create, and optimize their content themselves. This can be a huge time commitment. And you can already see how these sentences are getting a little bit easier to read. These ideas are simplifying themselves. We all want an ROI on our marketing, so it's logical to wonder. And look, I just made it down to grade 8. Now, we don't need to simplify to the point that my first grader can read this. We don't need to go quite to that level of simplicity, but the more that we can simplify this, the more that we can make it easier to read. This is a difficult clause here, and I don't need to include the word unintentionally. And actually I do. I need to include that. You don't have to pay attention to all of these. But wow, that's a very long paragraph, and I didn't really notice how long that paragraph was. So maybe if I break it into 2 and was registered, maybe I could say that, so finding ways to adjust. We don't need the word typically, and just simplifying things down. I use was registered twice. Maybe I could say that you registered today. And that way it's not in passive voice anymore. And the more of these little changes, and maybe instead of I've been told, you could just say people are finding me on Google. And that simplifies it, right? So just having somebody else point out to you what might not be easier for someone else to read. Or maybe if there are people in your audience who have English as a second language, some of these clauses can be a little bit complex to try to wrap our heads around. And if you're like me, you're a verbal processor, you're working off something that you said and then transcribed, I have a tendency to have a lot of run-on sentences in here. You can already tell that. So breaking these down into smaller sentences, smaller paragraphs, easier to read, this can make a huge difference in the experience that people have of reading your content and how long they'll stick around on your page and how likely they are to continue to read. You also need to kind of factor in who your audience is. So I did a keyword research and content strategy for an endodontist who was talking to dentists about root canals. Actually quite fascinating to learn about. But she would have been well above this 8th grade reading level because she was talking to people in her industry who had already attained a certain level of education. And so therefore, we were able to get a little bit heavier into the jargon there. But if your audience is busy moms and you know that they, not that I know how this would feel, so they have kids climbing on them when they're trying to consume content and their kids interrupt them 20 times a paragraph to ask for string cheese, then maybe you want to simplify things down so that way the moms can follow along with where they're going and be able to read in between bites of children's string cheese and children demands for milk. I have no idea what that would feel like. So that is our idea about accessibility and how we can make sure that people are not only finding our content, but they're able to read it and process it in a way that is respectful to people who may not be at the same level of education or knowledge of the topic that you are at. We are so close to being done. I have one more thing I want to point out before we get to our publishing. And so I will see you in the next video.